recording. Yeah, so that looks like everything's all right. So it's Tuesday the 26th or 27th. I can't remember anymore. I'm having a bit of a Groundhog Day relationship with work at the moment, and it just feels like I'm in there every day, because I am in there nearly every day. So sorry there's not been any. Let's just do this now. Okay, so sorry there hasn't been any video for the last 3 days, and I did feel it, and I tried to shoot some video yesterday. I just couldn't reconcile it with what I wanted to say. The video was meaningless movement, whereas at least this is me getting my exercise, going for a walk in the woods. Yesterday it was very rainy and very unpleasant outside, but what I did get to do is have a very long, interesting chat with Harlequin. Two old geezers just talking about stuff, and I've become a little bit fascinated with Guy DeBord, who is a philosopher in a movement in Paris in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, where the basic thrust of Guy Debord's and the Event International or something like that, you know, look it up, Guy Debord, but the Society of the Spectacle. If you just punch in Society of the Spectacle into YouTube, you'll find out a load of stuff, where basically he was saying anything that we put into the big pot of culture, you know, any art that we create, is kind of part of and self-references the spectacle of life that we're currently in a post-war consumerist society. And when somebody says to people like us that we're trapped, the first thing that you want to do is rip your way out of that trap, tear down the walls with your bare hands, set fire to the prison, and stand outside it smoking a cigarette, watching it burn. So I should think it can probably push a certain amount of nihilism your way if you were to look into it. Oh, look at this. Look at the way this stream has cut a little windy path. If you look at it down there, it sort of goes round and back on itself and out to where the river is, creating its own little jut of land. Interesting. So yeah, also, wait, okay, we're back again. So also the thing that's been, sort of consuming my thoughts is I am watching and I am subscribed to, if you go onto the Urban Agoge subscriptions, one of the newer ones is Those Vegan Guys. So there's a couple of people in Manchester, well in Oldham, which is near Manchester, talking about being vegan, which on a very surface level was, just as a surface thing, somebody talking about being vegan that also happens to be working class. And I know I'm feeling very much animated by the concept of class. That's I will get the gimbal to work. So yeah, I've been very much animated by the subject of class, because, you know, we live in a very unequal world. And it is, you know, the horrors of inherited wealth and stuff, you know, the thing that lots of people have warned against, because if you have inherited wealth, the people who inherit the wealth add to it, and then shit gets out of hand. And then those people with inherited wealth try to run the fucking world. Much to the dismay and annoyance of the people that don't inherit lots of wealth, because if you don't inherit a lot of wealth, then your trajectory, as generated by the people with inherited wealth, can only go down. It works something like this. Somebody inherits a house and it's worth a lot of money, and they are sent to private school because there is a lot of money, and they are taught at that private school that they have every right to run the fucking universe, and it is their duty to add to the wealth that they inherited. So because they believe they can run the fucking universe, they go to private school and they get a good job on the old boys network, whether that, you know, in stocks and shares, or the manipulation of wealth, or the manipulation of power in politics, and then go on to work in the financial sector as a board member because they worked in politics and they know the ropes and they're an asset to that company. Yeah, and they add to the inheritable wealth. Then when the next generation is born, they inherit, say, 5% more than their predecessor inherited, and they go and do the same thing. Now this sucking away of wealth just goes on and on and on. They own shares in companies, and the portfolio of shares gets bigger as the 5% becomes a 10% and then a 15%, and successive generations start to tie up the available money. There are exceptions to this, but in order to have the confidence to say, I will do this grand thing, rather than what working class people are taught is get job, keep head down, raise kids, be poorer, send kids hopefully off to education, but the starter, the sourdough mix of inequality, the yeast that you get is not there. You know, so sooner or later, a very few people end up owning a lot of the wealth, and that's continuing today. You've got the oligarch system in Russia, where Russia was very poor. When it became capitalist, it basically gave shares in all the big state-owned industries to all the people, and then because the people were absolutely broke, they sold their shares at knockdown prices to the people that have now become the oligarchs. So the oligarchs in Russia own all the stuff. So the Russian people are as poor, if not slightly poorer, than they were under communism, where the state owned everything, to now at least the state was kind of motivated for things to be, well, the ground plane, the idea of the communism that was set up in the Soviet Union was that, you know, they were at least trying to look after the people. If you don't look after the people, they die. They die a bit quicker if you murder them by the million, like Stalin did, but you know, they still die if you don't look after them, and then the state has not got the power base that it once had. The world's a messed up place, and if you look at it for too long, it kind of paralyzes you, you know, in the kind of, your brain kind of locks up, which is, I think, is probably what's happened over the last couple of days, especially in the mornings on the weekends, because I have to start at 12, which means that essentially I have to be out of the house before 11, which means if I wake up at 8, I've got 3 hours. You spend your first hour sorting out breakfast and your bag for work, and then you kind of sit down and make the mistake of watching a lot of YouTube. But YouTube is my university. It just is, it's good. It teaches you stuff. You can decide, you can become very much an autodidact if all you had access to was YouTube. So yeah, so there's that. So going back to the two vegan guys, they did a live chat, which I was lucky enough to catch the tail end of whilst at work. And, you know, it was interesting. Their politics were interesting. They both worked in the NHS, so they're both very much into voting Labour, which probably won't mean much to you if you're elsewhere. But a broadly socialist, you know, manifesto that does a lot of good things for a lot of people, like a lot of people. I mean, it doesn't really bring anything new in, it just resets it to about 20 years ago, where, you know, people could apply for a council house and get a free university education, stuff like that. Not free, because we're all paying taxes for it. And because of that, the normal monsters have come out of the closet. That's not a reference to homosexuality, but with literally, the moment you start talking about socialism, wealthy middle class people start telling you about how they're going to be screwed over on taxes and stuff like that, which is bullshit. Then mega corporations start telling us how they're going to leave the country if they get taxed properly, you know, and people start talking about, oh, it's a tax on ambition, when, you know, it's actually supporting ambition, because people will be able to go to university, including me. I certainly can't afford to go to university, and there's a lot of things that I want selfishly, you know. And why not? Because, you know, it's a case of, you mean you're going to take money off rich people and give some of it to me so I can get educated? You know, and a decent living wage so we can all be a bit more comfortable. You know, how is, you know, childcare for people that need it? And I'm not above a certain amount of means testing for that. I mean, why give it to everybody? If someone's earning £200,000 a year, and largely if you're earning £200,000 a year, you're generally doing fuck all for it. You get £2,000 a year because you've got this idea that you're worth £200,000 a year. You know, you're getting 20 times what the people that work under you get. More than 20 times, 25 times in some cases. And those are people working full-time jobs, and the £20,000 a year person is attending meetings because they have vision. So wealthy people are going to get taxed, good. Corporations are going to get taxed, good. If the corporation decides to leave the UK, good. You know, leave. You know, and if you're a big corporation, I would like to see your materiel that you have lying around in the UK is first optioned by the government. So you do, you know, if a company goes, oh, we will leave the UK, you know, the country goes good and nationalises that company and does a compulsory purchase order on the actual thing, and looks into it and has a competition law where the government can go, right, you're now all government employees. We've nationalised Google UK. We'll start providing our own search engine with no ads. How about that? You know, Amazon leaves the UK. Good. You know, they don't pay tax anyway. They cost us money because we're having to give working tax credits to the employees of Amazon just so they can survive. You know, so fuck off then. You know, re-regulate banking. Start putting a few people in prison. You know, it's the only way people are going to learn. I mean, that shit was coming down the pipe from Europe anyway. You will pay proper fucking tax. And when they say, but why should corporations or wealthy people pay for it? Well, generally speaking, wealthy people employ poorer people. They employ poorer people, but they don't really pay for things like the fact that that poor person has education paid for by the state, gets to work on roads and public transport assisted by the state. If that person falls sick, the employer doesn't have to pay medical insurance. I mean, they're not talking about taxing these people out of existence, and what happens is that those wealthy people start pretending that they do not understand fractional tax increases. So you've got wealthy people pretending not to understand how tax and therefore how money works, which is bullshit. And to be quite honest, I mean, I thought initially that James O'Brien on LBC, who is probably the only person at LBC that's even vaguely socialist, got phoned up and somebody was complaining about the new Labour manifesto and going, oh yes, it's a tax on innovation. And he goes, well, how much tax do you pay? And the guy pretended he didn't know. Like, a wealthy person doesn't know how much money they have. That's their main obsession. That's how you become wealthy. You are obsessed with increasing your money. And this person claimed not to know. Well, fuck him and everybody that's like him. You know. Okay, so people decide to leave the country. Good. You know, the wealthy people all want to jump ship. Good. Let them go, rip up their passports. Never let them return. Because you left in order to commit the crime of tax avoidance. You owe money because you're wealthy, because people work for you and those people are supported by the state. Their health is regulated by the state. Their education is regulated by the state, and you get to underpay them because the state will always pick up the slack. Well, fuck off. Go back to the hellish dimension you come from. Starting to really get into the idea of David Icke believing that all these people that are just so selfish they're prepared to destroy the rest of the economy just to be slightly more wealthy. You know, let's start referring to them as lizard people. You know? Why not? The lizard people will leave. Good! Maybe get to some idea of looking after our communities and making sure everybody's got the option on a job, and those that can't work are looked after, you know? And let's redefine what the energy situation looks like in the UK. Let's redefine what the agriculture situation looks like in the UK, you know? Let's do it. Let's be better educated and better fed. Let's be, better. Which I think is where Europe was going. The EU is looking at like making sure people pay their tax so countries aren't completely destroyed by a few big companies when those companies start to play silly buggers. I'm looking at you, Greece. I'm really sorry you had a socialist president, and the mean people of the world kind of fucked up. And now we're looking at the dissolution of NATO. I mean, does anything else play into Vladimir Putin's hands than the dissolution of the EU and the dissolution of NATO? The whole Brexit thing really, and whenever you question anybody on Brexit, what do we get for a 10% dip in our economy that's going to punish and fuck up all sorts of poor people? People are going to die in the crossfire of something that isn't even ideological to the people that are doing it. It's money. It's so they can have a deregulated banking sector, so it'll be like Shanghai on Thames. And Europe's right. We can't have that. You can't have money fleeing to another country where the wealthy pay almost no tax. Fuck them. And that's why there's, a huge outpouring of, it can't be done by everybody that opposes Labour. And anyway, so we're back to the vegan guys. So they were talking about their views on Labour, which align with mine pretty well. And then I think it's Jason, said, we've had a model on how to be decent to each other for some time now. It's called Star Trek. And it was like one of those bong moments, like, it's yes, we've got a model, We've got a model for, how we can interact as a species. So when you take that kind of like, so there are other people that think like that go, look at Star Trek, especially something like Next Gen, where, they understand that people are kind of difficult and interesting, and they do counselling, even on a warship. Or a ship of exploration, but it sure does get into a lot of space battles for a ship of exploration and peace. Anyway, I digress. So, you got this situation where people are valuable because of what they can do, or what they know, or how they interact with others, or, their basic skills. And the education system seems to exist to sort of stretch those skills to the utmost. And there are other species and other people that think differently to them. You're already prepared for the idea of like cultural differences in Star Trek. Rather than the slightly more dystopian view of something like Babylon 5. I mean, the thing is the Federation is strong because it's a union. It's a union of lots of different planets. And where we could be a union of lots of different peoples and viewpoints from all around the world. And we still can't get over this us and them thing. I want a situation where we're going, join us. It's just all us. It's all us really. It's just some people have forgotten that they're us. And we could be doing so much more. That's why, I don't know the person personally, but it's why Elon Musk is so interesting. Because he's just gone, wouldn't it be good if we were on the moon or Mars? And everybody went, yeah, well, that would be great. And it's kind of like, oop. So it's kind of weird sometimes when you come out and it's really awful weather. You think, all right, I'll have the woods to myself. But there's always other people. So yeah, I didn't want to be ranting, and some poor sod's got to listen to me rant. So yeah, but he's gone, so let's do it. If all that it takes is money, there are no proper electric cars, boom. There are proper electric cars. They're being sold. I mean, fair enough, they're being sold at the high end, but anything that's suitably expensive will be cheaper. Especially now we've got new solid lithium-ion batteries with solid cores that won't break down as quickly over time. They'll last 2 or 3 times as long and carry twice or if not more charge. So those electric cars are going to become real light and real cheap to produce, like, because the medium for the battery is kind of solid glass, like solid core lithium batteries. So those are working, and I know we get those stories every so often, but the person that's making these claims is the same guy that invented RAM and the lithium-ion battery in the first place, a guy called John Goodenough, and that's really his name. So it's backed up by somebody who's got a lot of cred in the scientific problem-solving community, and it's doing really well. It's in his 90s, like, but it looks like he'll get a really good last hurrah if he gets that up and running. So we exist in an environment where the technology to make everybody's lives a lot better exists. Okay, the technology's there. It's not someday we'll be able to. We already can now. And there's a bottleneck. Selfish fuckers. So now when you sort of say, right, our big problem is selfish fucking people out there, and if you're considering bitching about paying like 1% more tax on the top, the money after your first 150,000 or your first million, then tough shit. Your wealth is built on the backs of the proletariat, whether and we can definitely find a way that that's true. So no, that's the problem with capitalism. You can't be rich in capitalism and then bitch when you've got to pay your fair share, because it's basically the system that is supporting you. We need to find out a way to slow that shit down. And then you've got a situation where on top of that you've got the society of the spectacle, going back to the Guy DeBord thing, where we are just producing more of a spectacle whenever we interact, whenever we write anything, whenever we produce anything, whenever we create. So there must be a trick, or at least if we're going to put creativity into the spectacle, there's almost kind of a responsibility to put stuff that will change things for the better. Yeah? So to that end, with my long conversation yesterday with Harlequin, we've got an option. And I was originally going to call it, so we've got some ideas in the air. We've got Project Morlock, which is resilience training to go with the urban agoge hero training. Because what turns a person into a hero is their mindset. And with that mindset, you can be fitter, faster, stronger, tougher, more dangerous. You can be more caring. The concept of a hero varies from person to person. Be your own hero. But we all have a past. We've all done mean things. We've all done petty things. We've all done stupid stuff. That's the way of it goes. So with the sort of like neo-shamanism that I want to bring to that, especially Project Morlock, and maybe we'll come up with a better word, to go with that, you've got Church of Server, which is a way of clamping down on a certain amount of arrogance. Things out there are smarter than us. There are things out there that are smarter than us. We don't know what they're like. Could be an AI, could be aliens, could be a deity. There could be a creature so powerful that, for all intents and purposes, it is a deity. So it's open-ended, and that's evolving. So you've got Church of Server, Urban Agoge, and you've got Project Morlock. So that's 3 points that feed into one simple thing: a culture of, of a better expression of humanity. And using that word culture, and we go back to the Sean Kennedy attempt to do the same thing a decade or more ago, called cult. So if you spell culture with a K, you've got something that is outside, not of the pervasive, media culture that we've got in the world today. The culture of I have more money than you. The culture of I have more viewers than you. And let's go to the culture of I want to share something cool with you. So to that end, it'll be culture spelt with a K. And then, rather amusingly, I was doodling what the culture symbol would look like. So if you can imagine a sort of heavy, bold text K, and on every leg of the K, so the two angled legs and the up and down. So in every direction where the K is, becomes a point, there is an arrowhead, or an arrowhead shape. So they're like direction arrows. And then if behind the K there is an arrow leading to the K, if you can imagine that. So like a directional arrow pointing to the K, and then all the legs of the K have arrowheads on them. It forms something very similar to the electronics illustration of a transistor, which is a nod to the fact that without the invention of the transistor, I'm not talking to you now. We're not sharing ideas. The 1% of creative people and people that can see life could be better, the shaman gene, as I keep talking about, and it's only a philosophical placeholder. It's not science or anything, but the shaman, it's like information comes in and goes out in some very different directions. But also the idea of, look, technology has allowed us to clip together more than one shaman at a time. So maybe if you know some creative people that fit that description, you can point them at this channel, and maybe we can arrange either an in real life or a digital meetup. Now I'm hoping to go to those vegan guys meetup, and I think that they absolutely demonstrate that shaman gene because of their outside of the box thinking and their willingness to share that. And maybe I can see if we can create in real life. I mean, I can only do it on a local level if it's in real life. Can't fly to Australia and run one. Can't go to America at the moment and run one. Just don't have the funds. That's just the case. But if we had a new culture, it lines up nicely with, as I said before, the whole Sean Kennedy thing with patrolling and rant media, this idea that media does not have to be who has the most money. It can be very dedicated people managing to find media that is made for them by them. Because up until now, the big conglomerates have done it. So maybe we need to discuss things like mesh networking, personal servers, distributed server networks. That can't be too expensive. I've already proved that you can buy the body of a fairly workable low power PC for 20 quid, or a Raspberry Pi or something you've got lying around that's not being used by other things to create some kind of internet connected mesh network. And then the other linking is Ian Banks's Kulture, the Kulture novels. Ian M. Banks wrote the Kulture novels, which was a futuristic human-based society that interacted with other species that had evolved enough that they had a very supportive and mutually good, beneficial relationship with artificial intelligence, who are referred to as minds. So yeah, handy, no? So, the output from the last 3 days of you not getting any media is a kind of interesting idea. And I'm sure you'll trade 3 10-minute videos for one cool idea. So let me know what you think. I'm interested. Do you think the culture, the new culture with a K, is... And also it's super mysterious. Come and meet the culture. That should be enough to tempt a few of the smarter people through the doors. And we can work out how to communicate with people that don't exhibit the shaman gene. Maybe we can imply that there is already a culture of giving a shit about each other and wanting a better world for everybody. Yeah? Try that. It's got to be worth it. So yeah, so if you manage to give that a thought and you want to put a comment on it, let me know. But yeah, I'm pretty interested. I mean, I need to think about in real life meetings, digital meetups and all that sort of thing. So any ideas that my subscribers, or I'm going to call you teammates. Thank you, teammates. Anybody on the team that wants to add something into that would be good. And so hopefully this very long-winded explanation has That's the reason I haven't done anything for a couple of days. That and not having any bloody time. So I did some heavy lifting philosophically at work, which doesn't come easily to me. I'm not intellectual, I only stumble across stuff. Just like that. Oh, did you see the metaphor? Anyway, thanks for watching. Do take care and let me know your thoughts.